Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really very happy with the YouTube, and my special thanks to Google Chrome, and I'm also very grateful to the Facebook for their respective cooperation and coordination. And today I'm going to talk about Emily Dickinson's spiritual lyric because I could not stop her death by short or brief question answering. So before going to discuss uh, Emily Dickinson's spiritual lyric because I could not stop her death, I would like to talk about Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson was absolutely a spiritual poet as well as a mystic poet because she believes in Calvinism, spiritualism, mysticism, and she strongly believes that spiritual journey is more important than physical journey. To her, a soul is more important than a body because a soul will never die. A soul must be union with God after death. So, from this point of view, a soul is real and genuine. On the other hand, a body must be destroyed. A body is perishable, undoubtedly. A body is perishable, undoubtedly, and it must be destroyed after death. And it has no value in practical sense. So it is unreal. On the other hand, we see that uh, Emily Dickinson's father's family strongly followed Calvinism, and and truly speaking, she was born in a family of the early Puritan settlers in Massachusetts, and she was the second daughter of her parents, of her authoritative father, Edward Dickinson, who imposed his own religious beliefs and values on their children. So, from this point of view, we can say that Emily Dickinson was brought up in a strong discipline, in a strong Christian tradition. Uh, it is recorded and it is said that most of the poems of Emily Dickinson, most of her poems, poems are based on spirituality because of her excluded life, and most of the prominent writers and of his times and or the literary contemporary literary trends had no influence on her creative power. She was original and innovative in her own way. Uh, Better to say, she wrote as many as 1800, approximately 1800 poems that were discovered by her younger sister Lavinia, and only 7 poems were published during his practical life. Uh, in addition, uh, Emily Dickinson was such a mystic poet that she did not have any interest in public life, in popularity, in any popularity, and she recoiled herself in private life, recoiled herself in private lives. Uh, mm, so. Uh, So she sacrificed her lifelong spinsterhood uh, for the sake of spiritualism, mysticism, in search of, and she went out in search of a God, and she strongly believes in Christianity, uh, Christianity. Uh, but not paganism. She strongly believes in Christianity, and uh, she she is absolutely uh, omen of spiritualism and mysticism. Let's discuss the uh, Emily Dickinson's spiritual lyric because I could not stop her death by short question answering. My first question: how many poems were published during his lifetime? Only 7 poems were published during his lifetimes. And question number two: who discovered a collection of approximately or nearly 1800 poems by Emily Dickinson? Emily Dickinson's younger sister Lavinia discovered a collection of nearly 1800 poems composed by Emily Dickinson. Uh, Question number three. Question number three. Uh, what is the main idea? What is the main theme of this spiritual lyric? Because I could not stop for death. Mortality or the acceptance of death. Mortality or acceptance of death is the central idea, the main message of this spiritual lyric. Because I could not stop for death. And question number four. Uh, what is the central image? What is the central image used in this spiritual lyric? An eternal journey. That means a journey from life to death. A journey from life to death. A journey from life to death is the central image used in this spiritual lyric. Because I could not stop for death. And question number five. Question number five. What type of poem is in Because I could not stop for death? I have already told that it's a spiritual lyric. It's a spiritual poem. It's a spiritual lyric. So next question. The next question is a very very important question. What impression does the speaker about death? Uh, the the speaker gives the impression that the death is cordial, the death is meek, the death is amicable, meek and cordial. Next question, who initiated the journey? Uh, Death, absolutely, death initiated the journey. If you look at the title or name of the poem, you will see that it is written down in the past tense. But why? Why has the poet used past tense in writing this spiritual lyric? The poet has used past tense in Because I could not stop for death, because the speaker is telling in it her experience of death that happened, that took place centuries ago. That means she died centuries ago. And next questions. Next question, why did the speaker fail to stop for death? Why did the speaker fail to stop for death? Uh, uh, actually, the speaker failed to stop for the death because he was passing a very hectic day, and his life was absolutely full of daily activities, daily chores of life. And my next question, if we look at the stanza 3, we know very well that there are six stanzas, four lines stanzas. There are six stanzas in this spiritual lyric. If you look at the stanza 3, you will see that stanza 3 is full of mystic elements, is full of symbols. If we recite the four verses, we pass the school has children stop at a recesses in the rising. We pass the fields of grazing grain. We pass the setting sun. So we'll be able to find out some symbols from this stanza 3. School gazing grain and setting sun. But why do school gazing grain and setting sun symbolize Stanford in this spiritual lyric? Because I could not stop for death. School means, please attention please, school stands for childhood, or symbolizes childhood, and gazing grand stands for or symbolizes maturity, and finally the setting sun stands for a dying person. Please look at the stanza 4. Look at the stanza 4. If you please recite the poems stanza. Please recite the stanza 4. Or rather, we passed us the dews, a drew, quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet only tally. So this stanza is very very important, and this stanza is also full of mysticism, full of symbols. But my question: why does dews drew? Why does dews drew, quivering and chill indicate in this stanza? If you look at the stanza 4 and line verse 2, you will see what do you mean by the expression? What do you mean by the expression? Dews drew, quivering and chill. What do you mean by the expression? Dews drew, quivering and chill. So, dews drew, quivering and chill means the coldness that overpowers human body after death, and it signifies that the speaker is already dead. The speaker has already been dead. And same stanza, it is said that Gosamar gown. But what does the Gosamar gown signifies in this spiritual lyric? Because I could not stop for death. So Gosamar gown signifies the sword made of very beautiful fine silk. It is the thin burial cloth with which the speaker's dead body was covered. My next question, where did the carriage pose? Where did the carriage of death? Where did the carriage of death pose in? Because I could not stop for death. The carriage of death posed or stopped in front of a house. Here, a house stands for a grave. My next question, when did the speaker die and breathe his last or pass away? So the speaker passed away centuries ago or died centuries ago. My next question, what happened to the journey undertaken by death at the end of this spiritual lyric? Because I could not stop for death. That means the journey continued to the eternity. The journey continued towards eternity. And my next question, give a list of the main symbols. Give a list of main symbols used in this spiritual lyric, because I could not stop for death. We have already noticed, we have already gone through the stanza 3. We have got three symbols: school, gazing grain, and setting sun. So school, gazing grain, and setting sun have been used as symbols which respectively indicate childhood, maturity or ripeness, and the end of life or descent into death. And my next question, give an example of anaphora used in this spiritual lyric, because I could not stop for death. If you look at the stanza 3, you will that we passed has been used 3 times. So it is an example of anaphora. And cite at least 3 personification, 3 examples of personification. Cite at least 3 examples of personification from this spiritual lyric, because I could not stop for death. Death, immortality, and the speaker. Death, immortality, and the setting sun. Death, immortality, and setting sun are 3 examples of personification used in this spiritual lyric, because I could not stop for death. My next question, what figures of speech do you find in Emily Dickinson's use of my labor, my leisure? And this is a verse, this is a line from the spiritual lyric, because I could not stop for death. But what do you mean by the expression my leisure, my labor, my leisure? So here, Emily Dickinson's use of my labor, my leisure means our whole life, with which the words labor and leisure are connected, related. So this kind of use is called metonymy. If you look at the final stanza, that means 6th stanza, you will see that since then, these centuries and yet feels shorter than the day. But what do you mean by the expression? That means what figure of speech is in the following lines? What figure of speech is in the following lines? Since then, 'tis centuries and yet is and feels shorter than the day. That means it is an example of paradox. There is a paradox in these lines. There is a paradox in these lines, and one of the most prominent, one of the most important question: give examples of alliteration, personification, a metaphor, and anaphora from this spiritual lyric, because I could not stop for death. So, gazing grand. Gazing grand is an example of alliteration, and death. Death is an example of personification, and house is an example of metaphor, and finally, we passed is absolutely an example of anaphora. My next questions: where and when was Emily Dickinson born, and where or when Emily Dickinson passed away? Emily Dickinson was born in 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts, USA, and she passed away at the same place in 1886. And my next question: what was the religious belief of Emily Dickinson's father's family? Emily Dickinson's father's family strongly followed Calvinism. So I also would like to discuss more questions. Okay, one of the most important question I would like to discuss as much detail as possible: what mystic elements do you find in "Because I Could Not Stop for Death"? What mystic elements do you find in this spiritual lyric, "Because I Could Not Stop for Death"? So I would like to discuss this question as much detail as possible. "Because I Could Not Stop for Death" is absolutely full of mystic elements. The theme and the poetic styles that have been used in this poem are all elements of mysticism. So the journey undertaken by death, a speaker, and immortality is a mystic element, and this is a conceptual journey from birth to eternity through grave. The carriage in which the three persons ride does not exist physically. The carriage in which the three persons ride does not exist physically. It's a mystic concept. Similarly, death is another mystic element, because it is personified as gentleman bride, which is impossible in any practical sense. The grave, treated as a house, is also a mystic element. Finally, the horses plunging into eternity along with the carriage is possible only in mysticism. So therefore, the poem is replete with mystical elements. The poem is full of mystical elements. My next and final questions. My next one of the most important questions. What are the symbols used in this spiritual lyric, "Because I Could Not Stop for Death"? And I also would like to discuss this question as much detail as possible. So Emily Dickinson has used some symbols in this spiritual lyric, "Because I Could Not Stop for Death," which is very effective in meaning, which has inner meaning out and out. The journey is the journey undertaken by death, and the speaker and immortality is a symbol of a soul's journey from birth to eternity through grave, through death. The carriage is a symbol of a horse that carries the dead body to the grave, and the skull symbolizes the early part of life, and the grazing grand stands for the old age. The setting sun is the symbol of a dying person, and the house stands for a grave. The setting sun is the symbol of a dying person. The house stands for a grave, and stands for the grave. And the horse's head towards eternity is the symbol of a soul's journey into endless eternity. So thus the poet uses some symbols to suggest the inner meaning of the poem. It is worth mentioning that The symbols Emily Dickinson uses in this spiritual lyric don't have novelty. Mystics in most of the countries have interpreted life and death in the same way. My last and final questions. Uh, what is the rhyme scheme used in this spiritual lyric? Because I could not stop for death. So, because I could not stop for death, consists of 6 4-line stanzas, and the general rhyming pattern of each stanza is AB CB. AB CB. The first line of each stanza is made of 5 iambic feet, and the second line is comprised of 3 iambic feet. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for your cooperation and coordination.